moment Alara Whitmore stepped into JFK's Terminal 8, she felt the air tighten around her like an invisible fist. The bright boards flickered with departing flights, the hum of rolling suitcases filled the space, and the smell of burnt airport coffee drifted through the air. But none of that prepared her for what would come next. One flight, one aisle, one man who broke her, and another who unknowingly held her entire future. Her hand rested protectively on her swollen belly. Triplets, a miracle and a burden she carried alone. The overhead announcement called her group. She lifted her chin, smoothed her jacket, and walked toward the boarding lane of the American Airlines flight to Los Angeles. She just needed to make this trip, just needed to secure a job so her 3 unborn children wouldn't enter a world already stacked against them. But fate had other plans. As soon as she stepped into business class, her steps faltered. Sitting comfortably in seat 4C, sipping champagne like life never touched him, was Trent Caldwell, her ex-husband. The man who'd thrown her out the night she told him she was having triplets. The man who drained their accounts before filing for divorce. The man who told her, coldly, that 3 babies were a responsibility meant for someone with fewer dreams. And next to him, draped over his arm like a trophy, was Krista Malone, the woman who took Alara's job, her peace, and her marriage without blinking. Krista's laugh sliced through the cabin. "Oh look," she whispered loudly, "the charity case is here." Trent smirked, crossing his legs, flashing his Cartier watch as if it were a medal he earned. "Didn't expect you to afford business class, Alara. Welfare stepping up its benefits." The words hit her harder than the turbulence she feared. But before she could speak, before she could defend herself, before she could swallow the pride burning her throat, someone else entered the cabin. A tall man, dark suit, sharp eyes, quiet authority. Cassian Drake, CEO of Drake Aerodyne, the youngest billionaire in American aerospace, a man powerful enough to buy this entire plane without blinking. And yet he paused when he saw her. His expression changed, subtle, searching, as if a memory tugged at him from somewhere he couldn't place. "Alara?" he said softly. Trent's smug grin froze. Krista stopped mid-blink. Passengers turned. Cassian stepped closer, his voice steady but warm. "I thought it might be you." He glanced at her stomach, concern flickering in his eyes. "You shouldn't be traveling alone. Let me help." Trent shot up from his seat, rattled. "And who the hell are you to talk to my—" Cassian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I wasn't speaking to you." The entire cabin held its breath. Alara's world spun. The man who destroyed her sat 10 feet away. The man who didn't know he once shared a single unforgettable night with her now stood inches from her. And as the boarding line stalled behind them, Cassian gently placed his hand on her elbow. "Come sit next to me, Alara. You don't belong back there." Trent swallowed hard, because in that moment he realized Alara Whitmore wasn't the woman he left behind. She was the woman someone far more powerful had just stepped forward to protect. And the flight hadn't even taken off yet. Bold mini cliffhanger. Trent hadn't seen anything yet. Alara Whitmore had never imagined her life would shrink to a single rolling suitcase and a medical folder labeled high-risk pregnancy, triplets. At 31, she once commanded conference rooms in Manhattan, fluent in strategy, numbers, and every unspoken rule of corporate survival. People used to say she had a Wall Street mind with a heart too soft for it. Maybe that softness was why she was standing here now, exhausted, breathless, clutching her boarding pass like a lifeline. Before the divorce, her days unfolded inside a gleaming midtown tower, glass walls, city lights pouring in like liquid gold. She'd carry her MacBook Pro and Mont Blanc pen everywhere, always prepared, always polished. Her colleagues respected her, even envied her. But Trent, her ex-husband, resented it. He hated when she outshined him, hated that she was often invited into meetings he wasn't, hated that her salary grew faster. So when she told him she was pregnant, and then told him it was triplets, he didn't react with fear or joy. He reacted with calculation. 3 babies, he'd said, his voice cold as the Manhattan winter outside their apartment windows. "I didn't sign up for a charity project." 2 days later, he drained their joint savings to manage expenses, then filed for divorce. Krista Malone, his secret lover and her coworker, made sure the company fired Alara with a fabricated accusation that she'd leaked confidential data. HR didn't even let her clear out her desk. That was 3 months ago. Since then, Alara learned how heavy silence felt in a tiny rented studio in Queens, where the heater groaned all night and the walls were thin enough to hear neighbors argue. She lived on oatmeal and discount groceries, saving every dollar for prenatal vitamins and the Uber rides to the doctor when her dizziness got too severe to take the subway. Her pregnancies were hard. Too hard. Triplets meant constant fatigue, swelling, the frightening pressure beneath her ribs each time she climbed stairs. But every night she placed a hand on her belly and whispered, "You three are why I keep going." This flight to Los Angeles was her last chance. A consulting firm there was willing to interview her, quietly, away from Trent's influence. If she could land the job, she'd finally have insurance again. Stability, a future. But seeing Trent and Krista on this flight felt like walking into a storm without shelter. Their laughter stung, their smirks burned. Their eyes followed her like predators watching a wounded animal. Yet, even in the worst moment, she wouldn't cry. Alara refused to crumble in front of the people who wanted her destroyed. And then Cassian Drake appeared. She hadn't seen him in 2 years, not since that snowy night in Aspen where she'd gone for a conference. A night when loneliness and too much wine had pushed her into the orbit of a stranger with quiet eyes and a voice that felt strangely safe. They had talked for hours beside a hotel fireplace. One kiss, one night, one memory she never expected to revisit. She had no idea that man was a billionaire. She never even asked his last name. And now here he stood, taller than she remembered, dressed in a charcoal suit that blended with the cabin's soft lighting. He looked at her, not at her stomach, not at her tired eyes, but at her, in a way nobody had in months. "Alara," he said gently, "are you all right?" Nobody had asked her that in a long time. She swallowed hard. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice trembled. But Cassian heard the truth buried beneath it. He shifted slightly, positioning himself between her and the gawking passengers, as if shielding her from their pity, their stares, and most importantly, from Trent's poisonous glare. "Come," he murmured. "Sit with me." For the first time in months, Alara felt something unfamiliar. Not hope, something smaller, softer, safety. Bold mini cliffhanger, but safety wouldn't last, not with Trent Caldwell sitting 10 feet away, plotting his next move. The cabin of American Airlines Flight 417 shimmered under the soft amber glow of its recessed lights. Business class felt like another world. Polished, insulated, a floating slice of Manhattan luxury suspended 30,000 feet above ordinary troubles. The aisle carpet was thick enough to silence footsteps, the leather seats sculpted like designer armchairs, and the faint aroma of espresso drifted from the galley. Outside the windows, New York's skyline still sparkled beneath them, each tower a needle of light piercing the night. To most passengers, this flight was routine, another business trip, another coast-to-coast commute. But for Alara Whitmore, it was the razor-thin bridge between ruin and survival. As the plane taxied, she carefully lowered herself into seat 2B, right beside Cassian Drake. The seat automatically reclined a few inches to support her back, and she let out a quiet breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her belly was heavy tonight. Triplets shifted uneasily, as if sensing the turbulence of her emotions. Cassian watched her in silence for a moment, the way someone watches a fragile piece of glass they're terrified to break. His eyes softened, a rare contrast to his usual airtight composure. A billionaire like him, used to boardrooms on Park Avenue and executive jets with marble counters, didn't often share space in commercial flights. Yet tonight, fate had placed him inches from the woman he once held in a warm Aspen hotel room, unaware she now carried 3 lives connected to him. "Let me know if you need anything," he said gently. "You shouldn't have to travel alone in your condition." Her throat tightened. "I've been alone for months," she murmured, then quickly looked away, embarrassed to have said it aloud. Meanwhile, a few rows back, Trent Caldwell stared at them with fury simmering beneath his polished surface. He wasn't used to being ignored, especially by Alara. She used to hang on his words, soothe his ego, shrink herself so he could shine brighter. Seeing her beside Cassian felt like a crack splitting down the middle of his pride. "What the hell is she doing up there?" Trent growled. Krista Malone chewed her gum with exaggerated confidence, though jealousy flickered through her heavily mascaraed eyes. "You didn't tell me she knew Cassian Drake," she said, voice edged with suspicion. I didn't know, Trent snapped. She was supposed to be pathetic. That was the point. Krista leaned closer. If Cassian gets involved, we're finished. He has pull in every boardroom from Manhattan to Seattle. Don't let her play the victim, Trent. She's not as weak as she looks. He stiffened, swallowing hard. That was the problem. Alara didn't look weak right now. She looked protected. Up front, the flight attendant arrived with menus, real cardstock, embossed with the airline's signature crest. Cassian thanked her, then instinctively helped Alara adjust her seatbelt beneath her belly. His fingers brushed hers, warm and careful. Her breath hitched. She didn't know how to respond to tenderness anymore. Outside, the plane lifted off the runway, engines roaring. Buildings shrank beneath them, the Hudson becoming a silver thread in the distance. Alara pressed her forehead lightly against the window. Manhattan disappeared under clouds, leaving behind everything she lost. The job she loved, the home she built, the husband who threw her away, the reputation Krista destroyed. Everything she once relied on was gone. But as she turned back toward Cassian, his presence calm, steady, and strangely familiar, she realized something. She wasn't returning to the life she used to know. She was flying toward a truth bigger than anything she imagined. Bold mini cliffhanger. And somewhere behind them, Trent Caldwell unbuckled his seatbelt, ready to start a war at 30,000 feet. Trent Caldwell unbuckled his seatbelt with the self-importance of a man convinced the world still owed him attention. The plane had barely leveled off, but he was already rising from seat 4C, straightening the lapels of his navy blazer as if preparing for a performance. His Cartier glinted under the cabin lights, an accessory he used like a weapon, a reminder of the status he believed separated him from everyone else, especially Alara. Krista Malone crossed her legs and leaned back, chewing her gum in that slow, taunting rhythm that signaled trouble. Her platinum blonde hair was perfectly arranged, her red lipstick sharp enough to cut glass. She scanned the cabin like a predator measuring her territory, pausing only when her gaze landed on Cassian Drake's unmistakable profile. Her gum stopped mid-chew. "That's Cassian Drake," she hissed. "The Cassian Drake. What is he doing sitting with her?" Trent's jaw clenched. "He's nothing, probably just being polite." Krista arched a brow, amused by his delusion. "Billionaires aren't polite, Trent. They're strategic. If he's talking to Alara, he wants something." "Like what?" Trent demanded. Krista leaned in, her voice a low whisper dripping with poison. "Maybe she told him you ditched her when she got pregnant. Maybe he thinks she's worth rescuing." She let the sentence hang in the air. Powerful men love broken birds. Makes them feel like heroes. Trent's nostrils flared. "She wasn't supposed to bounce back," he muttered. "She was supposed to disappear." Krista smirked. "Then make sure she still does." Trent didn't like Krista's tone, but he needed her. She handled scandals for a living. Well, she caused them, then handled them. She was the reason Alara's old company fired her. It was Krista who leaked anonymous tips claiming Alara mishandled confidential files. It was Krista who spread rumors about Alara's mental state after the divorce. And Trent? He signed the paperwork and walked away. He'd been proud of it. Now watching Cassian Drake lean slightly toward Alara, concern etched across his features, Trent felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Real fear. Because Cassian Drake didn't just have money. He had influence, the kind that could vaporize Trent's career with a single phone call. Krista noticed Trent's panic and placed a manicured hand on his arm. "Relax," she whispered. "She's still weak. Look at her. She's barely keeping it together. This little moment won't last." But Krista was wrong. Alara wasn't fragile. She was exhausted, yes, pregnant with triplets, fired, humiliated, but beneath all that was a steel that hadn't cracked. If anything, Trent's cruelty forged it harder. Still, Trent's ego couldn't accept that. He stepped into the aisle and started walking toward her row. Krista grabbed his wrist. "Be careful. This is a public space. Phones are everywhere." Trent jerked away. "I don't care." Krista sighed, unbothered. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. The higher the altitude, the harder the fall." Up front, Alara saw Trent approaching. Her pulse jumped. Cassian noticed instantly. His hand tightened around the armrest. Trent stopped just inches from their row, planting himself like a barricade. "Well," he said coldly, "isn't this cozy?" Cassian slowly lifted his gaze, unbothered. "You're blocking the aisle." Trent ignored him. His eyes drilled into Alara. I didn't know you were traveling with company. Alara inhaled shakily. I'm just trying to get to my job interview, Trent. Please go back to your seat. Krista watched from afar, smirking like a cat enjoying the show. Trent leaned closer, lowering his voice. Don't embarrass yourself, Alara. Men like him don't look twice at women like you. Cassian's eyes darkened. Before either of them could react, a flight attendant approached sharply. Sir, you need to return to your seat. Trent straightened, plastering on a fake smile. Of course, I was just checking on my... You're disturbing other passengers, she cut in. Passengers were indeed watching, phones were out, and for the first time, Trent realized he wasn't the one controlling the narrative anymore. Bold mini cliffhanger, and the recording that just captured his words hadn't even begun to ruin him. The cabin had settled into a soft hush, the kind that only forms when too many people witness something they shouldn't. The tension Trent left behind clung to the air like static. Alara shifted in her seat, pretending to read the safety card, trying to steady her breathing. Her babies kicked beneath her ribs, an anxious flutter she'd learned to hide. But Cassian saw everything. He always did. You don't have to endure him, Cassian said quietly. His voice was low, firm, filled with a kind of authority she wasn't used to anymore. It didn't ask, it reassured. Alara swallowed hard and forced a nod, though fear still curled in her stomach. Trent was dangerous when threatened, and he'd just seen her protected by a man he absolutely could not intimidate. The flight attendant returned with a tray of sparkling water and ginger ale. For you, Miss Whitmore, she said softly, her eyes warm with sympathy. And a blanket? It's a long flight. Alara blinked in surprise. She hadn't asked for anything. She glanced at Cassian, who simply looked out the window as if he hadn't orchestrated the kindness. He had a way of helping without drawing attention, something Trent had never mastered, even on his best days. But peace never lasted long where Trent Caldwell existed. From the back of the cabin, a man's voice suddenly erupted. Seriously? You're telling me she gets special treatment? Trent. The attendant tried to calm him, but he only grew louder. I've flown business class for years. She gets a blanket and water delivered because she bats her eyelashes at some billionaire? Passengers stiffened, some frowned, others pulled out phones again. Krista covered her face, mortified, but not enough to stop him. Trent stood, projecting his voice so the entire cabin could hear. Alara Whitmore is not who you think she is. She's a manipulator. She faked being sick at work. That's enough. Cassian's voice cut through the noise like a blade. He rose slowly, unhurried, steady, terrifyingly calm. The kind of calm that only comes from knowing you hold the power to destroy a man's entire career with one sentence. Trent sneered. What? You think your billions matter up here? Cassian stepped closer. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further. Embarrass myself? Trent barked out a laugh. She ruined my life. She trapped me with... Alara flinched. Her hand instinctively shielded her belly. Cassian saw that, and something in him snapped. He moved between them, blocking Trent's view entirely. You abandoned her, he said evenly. You emptied her accounts. You left her without health insurance while carrying triplets. Gasps broke out across the cabin. Krista froze. Trent's face went ghostly white. Who told you that? Trent demanded, though his voice wavered. Cassian didn't blink. I know enough to say this. If you speak to her again, you will regret it. The threat wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Billionaires didn't shout to be believed. Trent lunged slightly forward, more impulse than intention. But that was all it took. Several passengers stood up. Someone pressed the call button. A flight attendant hurried over, breathless, her tone no longer polite. Sir, if you continue this behavior, we'll have no choice but to report you to the pilot. Phones were recording again. Trent finally noticed. He paled. I wasn't. This is being taken out of context. But his voice drowned beneath a wave of whispers. That's her ex-husband? He left her while pregnant? What a monster. Shame wrapped around Trent like a noose. He stumbled back to his seat, unable to escape the eyes, the murmurs, the phones capturing every second of his unraveling. Krista moved away from him, sliding to the edge of her seat to avoid the fallout. But the worst was yet to come. Because Trent didn't know one thing. Someone had just sent the video to social media. Bold mini cliffhanger. By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, Trent Caldwell would no longer be a private man. Alara had held herself together for months, through the divorce, the job loss, the humiliation, the loneliness, the impossible weight of carrying triplets alone. But now, with the plane humming steadily at cruising altitude and every whisper behind her tied to Trent's public meltdown, her body began to betray her. It started as a tightening across her abdomen, not painful, just pressure. Then another. A slow, rolling wave beneath her ribs that made her inhale sharply. She pressed a hand against her belly, hoping it would settle. It didn't. Cassian noticed instantly. "Alara," he murmured, leaning toward her. "You're breathing too fast. What's wrong?" She shook her head, forcing a weak smile. "It's nothing. Just stress. I'll be okay." But her voice trembled and Cassian's eyes narrowed. He wasn't convinced. Before he could ask more, the babies kicked again, harder this time, sending another tight ripple across her abdomen. Sweat dampened the back of her neck. She closed her eyes. "Not here. Not now. Please, not 30,000 feet above the ground." Cassian placed a steady hand over hers, not touching her belly, just her fingers. "Tell me what you're feeling." She inhaled shakily. "Just pressure. It's normal for triplets." She paused. The usually cracked her composure. Her eyes burned. Cassian didn't hesitate. He rose just enough to flag down a passing flight attendant. "She needs medical attention," he said calmly, but with unmistakable urgency. The attendant instantly knelt beside Alara. "Miss Whitmore, are you experiencing contractions?" "No," Alara whispered. "I don't think so. I'm overwhelmed." The attendant's face softened. "You've been under a lot of stress. Let's check your vitals." Trent, sitting 4 rows back, twisted in his seat, eyes narrowing. "What now?" he muttered. Krista elbowed him sharply. "Shut up," she hissed. People are still filming. But Alara wasn't watching them. The world around her blurred, voices muffled, lights too bright. Her breathing hitched, shallow and quick. A dizzy fog wrapped around her mind, tightening like a rope. Cassian leaned closer. "Alara, look at me." She tried, but the pressure inside her chest expanded until tears finally spilled over her lashes. She covered her face, shoulders shaking, not with loud sobs, but with the quiet, heartbreaking collapse of someone who had held on for too long. Cassian gently pulled her hands down, his voice soft. "You're safe. Just breathe with me." Her breaths quivered. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want anyone to see me like this." Cassian shook his head. "You've carried everything alone. It's allowed to be heavy." His words, simple, steady, cut through the fog like light. But the moment cracked open something deeper. "I lost everything," she whispered. "My job, my savings, my home. Trent took everything. And I kept telling myself I was strong enough, but I'm tired. I'm so tired." Her voice broke. Cassian's expression shifted. Not pity, not shock, but a quiet, controlled fury aimed nowhere near her. Behind them, a few passengers lowered their phones, guilt flickering across their faces. Suddenly, the drama wasn't entertainment anymore. It was a human woman breaking under a weight no one should carry alone. The flight attendant returned with water and cool compresses. "Your blood pressure is elevated," she said gently. "Try to relax. We're here with you." But Trent chose the worst moment to stand. "Unbelievable," he muttered loudly. "She's doing this for attention." Passengers gasped. Alara froze. Cassian rose so fast his seat creaked. He turned slowly, controlled, icy, lethal. "That's the last thing you will ever say to her," Cassian warned. Trent faltered, because Cassian's next words could dismantle a man. "And when we land in Los Angeles, your life is going to fall apart faster than you ever made hers." Bold mini cliffhanger. But what none of them knew, Alara's collapse had only just begun. Alara pressed the cool compress to her forehead, trying to steady her breathing as the plane droned through the night sky. The episode had passed, at least the worst of it, but her body still trembled with aftershocks. The babies shifted restlessly, responding to her stress. She whispered soft apologies to them, fighting the fear clawing at her chest. Cassian didn't leave her side. He'd moved just close enough to shield her from the rest of the cabin, blocking curious eyes, blocking Trent's venom, blocking the world. His presence wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was steady, like a hand on your back guiding you through a storm. "Alara," he said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" Cassian hesitated, a rare thing for a man known for decisive billion-dollar moves. He pulled out his phone, lowered the brightness, and opened a confidential medical file. She recognized it instantly. Her prenatal chart, her due date, her conception timeline. Her pulse quickened. "Where did you get that?" "I requested it from the hospital the moment you nearly collapsed," he said. "I needed to know what kind of risk you were facing, and I have the legal authority to do that because—" He stopped himself. The silence thickened. Alara swallowed. "Because what?" Cassian's eyes met hers, and in that moment, the cabin noise faded to a distant hum. "Alara, the timeline matches." His voice was low, controlled, shaken. "The night in Aspen, the night you and I," her breath caught. "No, that can't be. Trent was." Cassian shook his head. "You told me in Aspen you hadn't been with your husband in months." Her world tilted. She remembered that winter night, snow falling against the hotel windows, the warmth of the fire, the rare moment she let herself feel wanted instead of criticized. A night she buried inside her memory the moment she returned to Manhattan and Trent's cold resentment. "I didn't think," she whispered. "I didn't think it mattered." Cassian's voice softened. "Alara, those babies, they might be mine." She felt dizzy again. But not from fear, from shock, from the sudden rewriting of her entire life. Her hands trembled over her belly. 3 heartbeats, 3 tiny lives. His. Cassian reached for her hand, not forcefully, but gently, waiting for her permission. When she didn't pull away, his fingers laced through hers, grounding her. "You should have told me," he murmured. "I didn't know," she said, breathless. "I didn't even know who you were. I thought you were just someone passing through my life." A flicker of something, regret, longing, crossed his face. "I've spent the last 2 years trying to forget that night," Cassian admitted. "It was the only time in my adult life I let myself be someone other than the CEO everyone expects. And then tonight, I see you again, and you're carrying 3 children who might be mine." Alara's voice broke. "What do you want from me?" Cassian leaned closer, eyes steady. "The truth, and the chance to step up if the DNA confirms it. I won't walk away from you, or them." A tear escaped down her cheek. "Trent will destroy me if he finds out." Cassian's jaw tightened. "Not if I destroy him first." Behind them, Trent froze in his seat, because he'd heard that last line. Every syllable, every threat. His face went chalk white. Krista's phone slipped from her hand. Because if Cassian Drake was the father, Trent's entire plan, the custody battle, the control, the leverage, would crumble into dust. Cassian turned back to Alara, voice gentle again. "We'll do a test when we land." He promised. "Whatever happens, you won't face this alone." For the first time in 9 months, Alara felt something break open inside her chest. Not fear, not panic. Something warmer. Hope. Bold mini cliffhanger. But someone else on that plane had already texted the news to the press. Sleep never came easily on planes, but that night, not a single person in business class closed their eyes. The air felt charged, humming with tension and unanswered questions. Somewhere behind them, Trent whispered furiously to Krista, trying to figure out what to do with the bomb he'd just overheard. Somewhere in the middle rows, phones buzzed with alerts, as gossip accounts picked up vague hints from an anonymous passenger. And at the front, seat 2B, Alara Whitmore's life quietly shifted. She sat back, breathing slowly, letting Cassian's earlier words echo in her mind. "You won't face this alone." For months, she had carried her pregnancy like a secret burden. Now it felt like a shield, a beginning instead of an ending. But she was still fragile, emotionally drained, stretched thin from stress and fear. Her earlier collapse left her embarrassed, cheeks warm with humiliation. Cassian watched her carefully, not with pity, but with an understanding that felt intimate and unfamiliar. "Lean back," he urged gently. "You need rest." She shook her head. "I don't want to look weak in front of him or anyone." Cassian's gaze softened. "You're not weak, Alara. You're surviving. There's a difference." Those words, simple, steady, slipped into the cracks of her breaking heart and held the pieces together. The flight attendant returned with a warm towel and a small kit. "Here," she murmured. "Lavender oil. Helps with the anxiety." She lowered her voice. "Several passengers complained about Trent. If you need anything, we're all here for you." Alara blinked, shocked. People were helping her. People she didn't even know. Cassian thanked the attendant before turning to Alara. "You should freshen up," he suggested. "Not for them. For you." She hesitated, then nodded. He helped her stand carefully, offering an arm without forcing it. She accepted, her balance steadying as she made her way to the restroom. The mirror inside was harsh, airplane lighting always was, but tonight it reflected a truth she hadn't seen in months. She didn't look broken. She looked tired, yes, scared, yes. But beneath the exhaustion was a woman who'd endured hell and was still standing. She splashed cool water on her face, reapplied a bit of lip balm from her bag, smoothed her hair, and straightened her clothes. It wasn't glamour. It wasn't a makeover. It was reclamation. When she stepped back into the cabin, the change wasn't physical. It was in her posture. Her shoulders no longer curled inward. Her pace no longer faltered. Her eyes no longer darted nervously toward Trent's row. Krista noticed first. "What is she doing?" Krista whispered, voice sharp. Trent scowled, acting like she owns the place. But Alara didn't look at them. She walked straight toward Cassian, who stood as she approached. For a moment, she caught his eyes and found an anchor there she didn't expect. "Feel better?" he asked. She nodded. "Better than I have in months." The words surprised even her. She eased back into her seat, calmer now. Cassian handed her a glass of cold water. "Drink," he murmured. She obeyed, letting the coolness settle her nerves. Then, slowly, almost shyly, Alara reached down and placed Cassian's hand over her belly. A subtle kick thumped against his palm. His eyes widened, breath catching silently. "They're strong," she whispered. He swallowed. "So are you." For the first time she believed it. Behind them, Trent watched the exchange unfold, jealousy, panic, and dread twisting together in his chest. He couldn't control her anymore. Couldn't shame her. Couldn't break her. Because something fundamental had shifted. Alara Whitmore wasn't the abandoned ex-wife anymore. She was a mother, a fighter, a woman rising. Bold mini cliffhanger. And the woman Trent once destroyed was about to become the woman he could never touch again. The cabin lights dimmed as the flight attendants prepared the first meal service, but the tension inside business class only sharpened. People weren't relaxing. They were waiting. Waiting for the next move, the next spark, the next explosion between the man who once owned Alara's life and the man who now stood ready to defend it. Trent Caldwell watched Alara like a hawk. His jaw pulsed, fists clenched around the armrests. Every time Cassian lifted a glass of water for her or adjusted her blanket, Trent's face tightened. He wasn't seeing a woman he left behind. He was seeing a future slipping through his fingers, a future he thought he'd control. Krista Malone sensed it too. She leaned toward Trent, lowering her voice to a harsh whisper. "You need to get ahead of this. Your reputation is already tanking online. That video of you yelling, it's everywhere." Trent's stomach dropped. "Everywhere?" She nodded. "Everywhere. And the comments, they're bad. People are saying you abandoned a pregnant wife. Sponsors will pull out, clients too." Trent's panic swelled. "Then help me fix it." Krista's smile was icy. "There's no PR strategy for behaving like human garbage." He glared at her, but Krista didn't flinch. She was slipping away from him. Calculating, cold, already drafting an exit plan. She didn't want to sink with a man going down in flames. Meanwhile, in the front row, Alara finally felt steady again. The meal tray before her sat untouched. She could only manage a few sips of ginger tea, but her posture remained composed, her breathing slow and controlled. Cassian had created a quiet oasis around her, shielding her with his presence, his voice, his quiet sense of command. The flight attendant returned to their row, but she wasn't carrying drinks this time. She held an iPad, a worried look shadowing her features. "Ms. Whitmore," she said softly, "I'm so sorry, but you should be aware. A post about you is trending. We're getting some alerts from the communication system. It seems to be about your ex-husband." Alara's chest tightened. "What kind of post?" She flipped the screen. There it was, the video, recorded from 3 different angles, edited by someone mid-flight, uploaded to every major platform, already at 1.7 million views. Trent Caldwell screaming at her, Trent calling her manipulative, Trent accusing her of faking her pregnancy, and Trent lunging toward her before the attendants intervened. All captured, all permanent. Cassian looked over the iPad, his expression turning glacial. "Who posted it?" The attendant hesitated. "It appears to be seat 9A. Cassian turned. Seat 9A was occupied by a teenage girl wearing a Stanford hoodie and holding her phone like a trophy. When she saw Cassian looking, she waved sheepishly. Sorry?" He was being a jerk. Cassian almost smiled. Trent turned pale. "I'll sue," he muttered. "I'll sue every single person who posted it." Krista snorted. You can't sue the entire internet. Alara's hand fluttered to her mouth, overwhelmed by the sudden avalanche of attention. I don't want all this. Cassian placed a calming hand over hers. You didn't choose this, he did. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the cabin. Passengers nodded quietly. A few offered sympathetic smiles. One older woman whispered, You're very brave. Trent shot up from his seat. This is harassment? She's lying. I didn't abandon her. She abandoned me. He stormed into the aisle, raising his voice again. But this time, no one watched with curiosity. They watched with disgust. Even Krista. Even the flight attendants. Cassian rose slowly, tall, composed, terrifyingly calm. Sit down, Trent, he said, before you embarrass yourself even further. Trent pointed a shaking finger at Alara. This isn't over. Cassian stepped between them. Yes, he said softly, it is. Bold mini cliffhanger, because what awaited Trent in Los Angeles would end the life he once knew, permanently. The cabin lights glowed with a soft, late-night warmth as Flight 417 cut through the darkness toward Los Angeles. Most passengers had finally drifted into a half-sleep, but in the front row, Alara Whitmore sat awake, hands curled gently over her belly, breath even, mind strangely calm. Calmer than she had felt in months. Her entire world had trembled earlier. Trent's insults, his rage, her panic attack, the revelation about Cassian, the viral video, the pressure, the humiliation, the fear, all of it had crashed into her at once. But now, in the quiet hum of the darkened cabin, something else rose inside her. Resolve. Not anger, not vengeance, something cleaner, sharper, a promise to herself, one she should have made long ago. Cassian sat beside her, his arm relaxed across the armrest, his eyes half closed but his attention still on her, attuned to every small movement. You're quiet, he murmured. I'm thinking, she replied softly. About? Alara looked out the window at the horizon. Dark, endless, yet somehow full of possibility. About who I became when I was with Trent, and who I want to be now. Cassian turned toward her fully. And who is that? She exhaled slowly, as if releasing months of suffocated hope. A mother who isn't afraid, a woman who doesn't shrink herself, someone my babies can look up to and say she fought for us. Cassian's expression warmed, truly warmed, slowly, like a sunrise. You already are. She shook her head gently. Not yet. I've been surviving, not living. I want to change that. Her voice gained strength, surprising even herself. Trent spent years telling me I was small, that I needed him, that no one else would ever want me. She paused, emotion tightening her throat. I believed him for too long. Cassian leaned closer. You are not small, Alara. You never were. And now, she said, eyes glistening but steady, I'm done letting him define me. Cassian watched her with a mix of admiration and something deeper, something he hadn't let himself feel in a very long time. Good, he said softly, because once we land, everything changes. Alara blinked. Changes how? Cassian hesitated, not from uncertainty, but from choosing his words carefully. If the DNA is what I think it is, I'll take responsibility, fully, not out of guilt, but out of choice. Alara's breath hitched. Cassian? I'm not expecting anything from you, he added quickly. Not trust, not affection, not a place in your life, just the chance to do what's right. Her chest tightened in a way that wasn't painful this time, just overwhelming. You haven't even asked if I want your help, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You don't have to ask. I'll be here anyway. She looked away, overwhelmed by the sincerity she wasn't used to, the gentleness she feared she didn't deserve. But then a movement caught her eye. A woman from across the aisle, middle-aged, elegant, with a pearl bracelet and a warm smile, leaned slightly toward her. Dear, she said softly, I saw what happened earlier. I just want you to know, you handled yourself with more grace than most people could. Alara flushed in embarrassment. I didn't feel graceful. The woman smiled kindly. Grace isn't about looking strong, it's about standing back up, and you did. Cassian nodded, as if seconding the sentiment. Alara absorbed their words, letting them settle into the deepest parts of her. For months she had lived in shadow, shrinking under fear and exhaustion. But now, on a plane slicing through the night, she felt herself unfolding again. I won't hide anymore, she whispered. Good, Cassian replied. Because Trent is about to face consequences he never saw coming, and you? He paused, a rare softness easing into his voice. You're about to rise. Bold mini cliffhanger. But rising always comes with a cost, and Los Angeles was waiting to collect it. Somewhere above the Rockies, the smooth hum of flight turned uneasy. A low rumble rolled beneath the aircraft, barely noticeable at first, just enough to vibrate the glasses on the meal trays. Alara didn't think much of it until a sharper jolt followed, rocking her gently in her seat. Then another. The seatbelt sign chimed. Passengers straightened. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Cassian's eyes snapped open as he instinctively braced a hand on the armrest. That wasn't normal turbulence, he murmured. Before Alara could respond, a sharp, twisting pain rippled across her lower belly, different from the earlier pressure. Deeper, more insistent. She sucked in a breath, fingers curling around the seat. Cassian's attention immediately shifted. "Alara, talk to me." Her face blanched. Something's wrong. She tried to breathe through it, but the pain tightened again, harder this time, forcing a small cry from her throat. Passengers nearby turned. Cassian pressed the call button instantly. "We need medical assistance. Now." A flight attendant hurried over, holding the wall for balance as another tremor rattled the cabin. "What's happening?" Cassian answered, before Alara could force out words. "She's carrying triplets. She's in pain, intense pain." Alara gripped her stomach, her voice thin. I think it's contractions." The attendant paled. "At this altitude? We need to check immediately. I'll bring the medical kit and alert the cockpit." As she rushed off, Cassian moved closer, one hand lightly supporting Alara's back, the other hovering protectively near her arm. "Stay with me," he urged, voice calm but threaded with panic he never let surface. From 4 rows back, Trent stood abruptly. "Are you kidding me?" he snapped. "She's doing this now?" Krista slapped his arm. "Sit down, you idiot. She could be in real trouble." But Trent wasn't listening. He stormed down the aisle, stopping just short of Cassian. "What did you do to her? She was fine before you showed up." Cassian turned slowly, eyes dark, dangerous. "Walk away, Trent. I'm not letting you steal my family." "They were never yours," Cassian said, voice low as thunder. Trent faltered. Just as he opened his mouth to shout again, another heavy jolt rocked the plane, this one harder, sending gasps through the cabin. Cups toppled. A few passengers clutched their armrests, and Alara cried out. Cassian whipped back toward her, panic burning past his composure. She doubled forward, breathing fast, eyes squeezed shut as pain radiated through her abdomen. "Oh God," she whispered. "Cassian, something's wrong with the babies." He caught her shoulders, steadying her trembling frame. "Alara, look at me. You're not alone. I'm right here. Breathe with me." The flight attendant returned with a medical kit and an oxygen mask. "Ms. Whitmore," she said, kneeling, "we've contacted the cockpit. The captain is preparing for an emergency descent. We'll land as soon as possible." Alara's tears spilled, her voice cracking. "I can't lose them. I can't, please." Cassian pressed his forehead to hers, his hand cupping her cheek with heartbreaking tenderness. "You won't lose them. I swear to you. I'm not letting anything happen to you or our children." The words hung between them, fragile yet powerful. Passengers watched in stunned silence. Even Trent froze, color draining from his face as the gravity of the moment crashed over him. He wasn't the center of this story anymore. He wasn't the victim. He wasn't the hero. He was simply the man who walked away. The plane dipped sharply, engines roaring as it initiated descent. Oxygen masks rattled overhead from the turbulence. The cabin dimmed. The captain's voice crackled over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We are making a priority landing." Cassian tightened his hold on Alara, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Just hold on a little longer. Help is coming." Her fingers tangled with his. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," he said, brushing a tear from her cheek. "But I'm here, and I'm not leaving." Bold mini cliffhanger. But as the plane dropped through turbulent clouds, another crisis waited on the ground, one that would change everything. When Flight 417 finally broke through the clouds, the lights of Los Angeles sprawled beneath them like a glittering net. The descent had steadied, but inside the cabin, Alara's fear still pulsed through the air like static. Every breath came shallow. Every ripple of movement in her belly made her grip Cassian's hand tighter. "Almost there," Cassian whispered, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. "Hold on for me." His voice grounded her, warm, steady, unshakable. She focused on it as the plane lined up with the runway, rattling gently in the crosswinds. The landing gear dropped with a heavy thump. The wheels screamed against the tarmac. and finally, mercifully, the aircraft slowed into a taxi. Passengers exhaled in collective relief, but Alara wasn't relieved. She was terrified. Her abdomen tightened again, sharp, insistent, unmistakably rhythmic. Not the pressure she'd felt hours ago. These were real contractions. Her heart hammered as she pressed both hands to her belly. "Cassian," she whispered. He leaned close instantly. "Are they stronger?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Yes." Cassian raised his hand to call the attendant, but Trent staggered forward down the aisle, face red, voice rising. "This is ridiculous. I demand we deplane immediately. I have business in Beverly Hills." Cassian whipped around. "Sit down." "I won't be ordered around by you." But before Trent could take another step, his knees buckled. Not from weakness, from shock. Because at that exact moment, two paramedics boarded the plane with urgency written across their faces. "Passenger Alara Whitmore?" one called out. Alara tried to sit up straighter, but another contraction tore through her, stealing her breath. Cassian caught her shoulders, keeping her upright. "She's here," he said. "She's in pain. She's carrying triplets." The lead paramedic's expression shifted instantly. "We need to get her off this plane now." Passengers stepped aside, murmuring encouragement. One woman whispered, "Hang in there, sweetheart." Another reached out and squeezed Alara's hand for luck. In the middle of the commotion, Krista tugged Trent backward. "Do not go near her right now," she hissed. "Everyone's filming. You'll look like the villain." "I'm not the villain," Trent snapped. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Cassian helped ease Alara to her feet, supporting her weight as the paramedics guided her toward the exit. Every step sent another jolt through her abdomen, sweat dotted her forehead, fear flickered in her eyes. "I can't do this," she whispered. "You can," Cassian said, tightening his grip. "You're the strongest person I know." The words hit her harder than the contractions. Because Trent never called her strong, he called her dramatic, overly emotional, a burden. Yet Cassian, this man she barely knew, this man tied to her children by fate and a forgotten night, saw her strength even now. They reached the front door of the plane. Cold airport air rushed in. Red lights flashed outside as another emergency vehicle pulled up beside the jet bridge. But before the paramedics could escort her down, a loud commotion erupted behind them. A second plane door had opened farther down the fuselage, and airport police rushed aboard. Passengers whispered. Cassian turned sharply. The officer spoke with crisp authority. "We're looking for Trent Caldwell." Trent froze. What is this?" The officer stepped forward. "You're being detained for questioning regarding the viral incident aboard this flight and a pending investigation from your employer." Krista gasped. The phones came up again. Trent's face drained of color. And for the first time since she'd boarded the plane, Alara felt something shift inside her. Not pain, power. A flicker of justice. Cassian met her gaze with quiet reassurance. "Focus on you," he whispered. "Let the world deal with him." Alara nodded weakly as another contraction hit. The paramedics started moving again. But one thought echoed through her mind. Everything was changing. And not just for Trent, but for her, the babies, and the man quietly claiming a place beside her. Bold mini cliffhanger. Because the moment she reached the ambulance, a truth waited that would change all three of their lives forever. The ambulance lights strobed across the tarmac, casting red and white flashes over Alara's pale face as paramedics loaded her carefully onto the stretcher. The cool Los Angeles night hit her skin like a shock. Her breaths came shallow, controlled only because Cassian never let go of her hand. "You're doing great," he whispered, keeping pace beside the stretcher as they moved quickly toward the ambulance bay. "Just breathe through it." Alara nodded weakly, though fear thickened her throat. Every contraction felt closer, tighter, sharper, like her body was trying to pull itself apart. She wasn't ready. The babies weren't ready. And yet, ready or not, fate never waited for anyone. Inside the ambulance, paramedic Alvarez clipped sensors onto her chest, adjusting the monitor. "Blood pressure's high. Contractions are irregular but too close together for comfort. We need to get her to the hospital, fast." Cassian climbed in without hesitation. Alvarez blinked. "Sir, only one. She needs me." His voice left no room for debate. The paramedics exchanged a glance, then nodded. Cassian took his seat beside her, gripping the rail with one hand and her fingers with the other. Alara exhaled shakily. "I'm scared." "I know." Cassian's thumb brushed her knuckles. But you're not alone anymore. I promised you that. Another contraction hit, harder. She squeezed his hand so fiercely that he winced, but didn't pull away. Outside, sirens wailed as the ambulance tore through LAX's service route. Her breaths turned ragged. Cassian, what if something happens? What if they come too early? What if? Stop. He leaned closer, letting his forehead rest gently against hers. Nothing is happening without you and I facing it together. I swear it. For a moment, there was no turbulence, no Trent, no cameras, no fear. Just his breath, her heartbeat. 3 tiny lives shifting beneath her ribs. But the calm didn't last. Alvarez frowned at the monitor. Her stress levels are spiking. We need to keep her conscious and calm. Miss Whitmore, do you have any history of trauma we should know about? Alara closed her eyes, her breath faltering. She didn't want to revisit it now. Not here. Not in front of Cassian. But the memories clawed their way out anyway. My ex-husband, she whispered. He used to yell. Slam doors. Blame me for everything. The night I told him about the triplets, he told me I ruined his life. Cassian's jaw tightened, rage simmering beneath his steady exterior. Alara's voice trembled. He said no man would ever want a woman carrying that many babies. That I should be grateful he didn't leave sooner. Cassian looked as though someone had punched the air from his lungs. Alara, he said softly, look at me. She did. That man didn't see you, not the way I did, not the way I do. You were never the burden, he was. Her lips trembled. And if these children are mine, he continued carefully, then you need to know something. Her breath caught. What? Cassian hesitated, not because he doubted his words, but because saying them out loud would change everything. That night in Aspen, I wasn't running from a company meeting. His voice lowered. I was running from an engagement. Alara blinked. You were engaged? I called it off the morning after we met, he confessed. Not because of you, because meeting you made me realize how wrong that life was, how much I'd been pretending. Silence rippled through the ambulance. Shock, fear, hope, all collided inside her. Why are you telling me this now? She whispered. Cassian's gaze softened with something unmistakable. Because the truth is, I never forgot you. Not for a single day. Her breath stalled. And if the DNA confirms what we already suspect, he added, voice thick with emotion, then everything I am, and everything I have, is yours and our children's. Alara's eyes filled. Cassian. But before she could say more, the ambulance lurched to a stop. Alvarez swung the doors open. We're here. And just as they rolled her out, her heart thundering, her world shifting, Cassian whispered one last promise. Whatever happens next, I choose you. I always did. Bold mini cliffhanger. But inside the hospital, someone waited with news that would upend all their assumptions. The sliding doors of St. Anne's Medical Center burst open as paramedics rushed Alara inside. Bright fluorescent lights cut across the hallway, nurses moved with urgent precision, and the sharp scent of antiseptic filled the air. Alara gripped Cassian's hand until her knuckles whitened. Stay with me, Cassian whispered, keeping pace as the gurney rolled down the corridor. I'm right here. A nurse intercepted them. Sir, you can follow, but please give the doctors space. Cassian nodded, but he didn't release Alara's hand until they physically guided him back. Alara reached out desperately as the doors swung closed behind her. Cassian, I'm here, he called as the doors shut, and then she was gone behind glass. Cassian exhaled, pacing the hallway like a caged storm. His coat still smelled faintly of jet fuel and lavender oil from the compress he'd held against her head on the plane. His mind raced. Triplets, early contractions, stress, danger, too much danger. A doctor approached with brisk steps. Mr. Drake? Cassian stepped forward. How is she? Stable, the doctor said. But we're watching her closely. Stress-induced contractions can escalate quickly with multiples. Cassian nodded, jaw clenched. I want the best team you have on her. You already have them, the doctor assured. But there's another issue. Cassian stiffened. What issue? The doctor lowered his voice. Someone is already here requesting access to her medical information. Someone claiming to be her spouse. Cassian's blood went cold. Trent, the doctor continued. He was belligerent. Security removed him from the maternity floor, but he's refusing to leave the hospital. Cassian's eyes narrowed, darkness flickering behind them. He comes near her again, and I'll... Mr. Drake, the doctor cut in gently, let security handle him. You need to stay focused on Ms. Whitmore. Cassian inhaled sharply, forcing himself back under control. Before he could respond, another voice called from down the hall. "Cassian!" A woman hurried toward him. Dr. Mara Livingston, the hospital's chief geneticist and a longtime colleague of his company's research team. She held a sealed envelope in her hands. His breath faltered. "The DNA results. You told me to rush it," she said. "I have the preliminary panel." Cassian swallowed hard. "And?" Dr. Livingston glanced around. "Let's sit." "No," Cassian said. "Tell me." She hesitated. "Cassian, the results are complicated." That word sliced through him. "Complicated how?" "The probability is extremely high, almost indisputable. The genetic markers match your profile on over 98% of the panel." Cassian's knees nearly gave out. That means, she confirmed gently, "the triplets are biologically yours." He closed his eyes, fighting the swell of emotion, relief, fear, awe, a fierce protectiveness that roared to life inside him. "But there's something else," she added. His eyes snapped open. "What?" She handed him the sealed envelope. "Two of the babies share an identical paternal sequence. The third shows a slight anomaly. Not a mismatch, just something we need a more complete panel to confirm." Cassian's voice dropped. "Are you saying one of the babies might not be mine?" "No," she said quickly. "Nothing suggests another father. It's likely a benign genetic variation. But in rare cases, triplet sets can form in mixed patterns, two identical, one fraternal." Cassian exhaled, tension loosening. "So they're mine?" "Yes," she said gently, "all three." Before he could respond, the maternity wing doors burst open. "Alara Whitmore is asking for Cassian Drake," a nurse called. Cassian didn't wait. He pushed past security, past nurses, through the doors. His heart pounded as he reached her room. Alara lay against pillows, eyes wet, face pale, but alive. "You came," she whispered. Cassian moved to her bedside, taking her hand with a tenderness that silenced the world. "I told you," he said softly. "I'm not leaving." Her lips trembled. "Did they say anything about the babies?" Cassian brought her hand to his lips. "Yes," he whispered. "And I need to tell you something important." Bold mini cliffhanger. Because the truth he carried into that hospital room would redefine everything they thought they knew about their future. Alara lay propped up on soft hospital pillows, one hand resting protectively over her belly, while the monitors beeped steadily beside her. Her color had improved, her breathing softer now, but her eyes still carried a lingering fear, the kind that only began to fade when Cassian stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "Talk to me," she whispered. "What did they say?" Cassian sat beside her, his expression a quiet mixture of awe and responsibility. For a moment, he simply held her gaze, as if memorizing her face before speaking the truth that would bind their lives together forever. "The DNA test came back," he said softly. Alara's breath hitched. "And?" Cassian reached for her hand and placed it gently against his chest, right over his heartbeat. "They're mine, Alara, all three." Her lips parted, eyes shimmering with disbelief and relief and something deeper, something that felt like release after months of carrying the weight alone. "Cassian." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." He nodded. "I know, and I need you to hear something." He leaned closer. "You don't owe me anything for this. Not a relationship, not forgiveness for disappearing after Aspen. I'm here because I want to be, not because biology demands it." Tears filled her eyes. "I never thought I'd hear someone say that." Before Cassian could respond, muffled shouting erupted from the hallway. They both stiffened. A nurse rushed to the doorway. "Miss Whitmore, stay calm, we're handling it." But the voice grew louder, angrier. "I have every right to be here. She's my wife. That billionaire fraud is trying to steal my family." "Trent." Alara felt her pulse spike. Cassian stood immediately, jaw steeled. "He doesn't get within 10 feet of her." Security moved swiftly, blocking the entrance, but Trent shoved against them, red-faced, frantic, desperate. "Get your hands off me. She's lying. I need to talk to her." Cassian stepped into the doorway, voice cold enough to freeze the air. "Your access to her ended the moment you abandoned her." "I didn't abandon anything," Trent snarled. "She trapped me, and now you're done." Cassian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Authority poured off him. "I have the DNA results. The children aren't yours." The hallway gasped. Nurses exchanged shocked glances. Trent staggered back as if physically hit. "No, that's not possible. She was my wife." "You hadn't touched her in months," Cassian snapped quietly. "You know that." Stop embarrassing yourself. Trent's panic spiraled. You're lying. You're trying to ruin my life. Cassian stepped forward, calm as steel. You ruined your own life when you left her with nothing. But the true blow came when a nurse whispered, "Isn't he the man from the viral video?" Trent froze. Cassian watched realization dawn. The internet had already judged him, and the hospital staff recognized him. His career, his reputation, his pride, everything was collapsing. Security finally seized him. Trent kicked uselessly. Alara, tell them that. Alara appeared in the doorway behind Cassian, pale but standing. Trent. He fell silent. Her voice trembled, but carried a strength he hadn't heard from her in years. Leave this hospital, leave my life, and never speak my name again. The command broke whatever flimsy thread he was hanging from. Security dragged him away as he screamed empty threats that no longer held weight. The moment the hallway quieted, Alara's knees buckled. Cassian rushed to her, catching her before she collapsed. "You shouldn't be standing," he murmured. "I needed to say it," she whispered, trembling. "I needed to end it." Cassian lifted her gently, guiding her back into bed. "You did more than end it. You reclaimed yourself." Her tears fell freely now, tears of exhaustion, release, victory. Cassian wiped them gently. "Rest now, I'm here." She looked up at him, voice soft. "Cassian, what happens next?" He brushed her hair back, eyes warm and certain. "Next," he said, "you heal, and I help you build the life you and our children deserve." Bold mini cliffhanger. But as Alara drifted into sleep, she didn't know tomorrow's sunrise would bring a decision that would change her future forever. Morning sunlight poured through the hospital room blinds, warm and golden, like Los Angeles itself was offering a fragile kind of peace. Alara woke slowly, blinking against the glow, her body still sore but calmer now. The contractions had stopped overnight, thanks to medication, rest, and the quiet assurance Cassian never stopped whispering whenever she stirred. He sat in the chair beside her bed, coat draped over the armrest, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He hadn't slept. She could tell, but his tired eyes lit the moment she moved. "Hey," he said softly, "how are you feeling?" She exhaled. "Better. Still scared, but better." He reached out, brushing her hand with his thumb. "You and the babies are stable. That's what matters." Before she could answer, Dr. Livingston entered, clipboard in hand, expression calm but urgent. "Miss Whitmore," she said, "your vitals look good. We'd like to keep you another night for monitoring, but the danger has passed. You're safe." Alara nodded gratefully, but then Dr. Livingston added, "There's one more thing. The hospital director asked to see Mr. Drake and Ms. Whitmore privately. It concerns last night's incident." Cassian's brow tightened. "Trent?" "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "And the media." Alara's breath caught. "The media?" Dr. Livingston sighed. "The viral video has reached national outlets. Several reporters are waiting outside the hospital. They know your name now. They know you're pregnant with triplets, and they know who was escorting you off the plane." Alara felt everything inside her sink. "No," she whispered. "I don't want that attention. Not now." Cassian put a steady hand on hers. "I'll handle it." But Dr. Spo and Livingston held up a hand. "Actually, the hospital thinks the best way to protect you is to join Cassian at tonight's Los Angeles Aerospace Gala." Alara stared at her as if she'd misheard. "A gala?" "Yes," the doctor continued. "It's private, secure, media-free, and more importantly, if you appear publicly with Cassian, it establishes a narrative before Trent can twist one." Alara's pulse sped. "I can't go to a gala. I'm pregnant, exhausted, and I barely survived yesterday." Cassian spoke gently. "You don't have to do anything, but if you go, we can control the story. We can protect you." A war raged inside her, fear versus dignity, exhaustion versus the sudden possibility of reclaiming her life. "Will I even be allowed to walk after last night?" she asked weakly. Dr. Livingston smiled. "Not alone, but with supervision? Yes." Cassian turned to Alara, voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "You won't be alone. I'll be with you every second." That evening, the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton glittered under crystal chandeliers. Alara stepped inside slowly, wearing a soft, elegant maternity gown provided by the hospital's charity partner, a deep navy dress that draped beautifully over her belly, a pair of low heels, hair pinned simply. No diamonds, no theatrics, just strength. Cassian walked beside her in a tailored black suit, his hand hovering near her back, not touching, but a silent promise of protection. Dozens of executives, investors, and aerospace leaders turned as they entered. Conversations paused, faces softened. Some looked shocked, but not judgmentally, more like awe. Alara felt every stare. Her breath wavered until Cassian leaned down and whispered, "They're looking because you survived hell and walked in anyway." She steadied. They moved through the crowd, whispers trailing behind them like a current. "That's her. The woman from the plane? She's Cassian Drake's?" The strength it must have taken to show up tonight. But the real shift came when the event host stepped onto the stage and lifted his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Cassian Drake and his honored guest, Ms. Alara Whitmore. A woman whose courage reminds us that true resilience is not forged in boardrooms, but in the storms life throws at us." The room erupted in applause. Alara froze. Cassian took her hand, lifted it gently, and kissed her knuckles. Soft, respectful, proud. She exhaled, emotion flooding her. For the first time in a long, painful journey, she felt seen. She felt valued. She felt powerful. Bold mini cliffhanger. But just as the applause faded, a familiar voice echoed behind them, turning triumph into danger once again. The applause had barely faded when a voice Alara prayed never to hear again cut sharply through the ballroom air. "Alara!" Her entire body stiffened. Cassian turned first, jaw locking, posture shifting into that dangerous stillness he carried like armor. Alara followed his gaze, dread crawling up her spine. Trent Caldwell stood near the entrance of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom, flanked by 2 hotel security officers who looked exhausted from trying to restrain him. His suit was wrinkled, his collar askew, his hair wild from struggling. He looked nothing like the polished executive he projected on social media. He looked unhinged. Krista Malone lingered several steps behind him, arms crossed tightly, eyes wide with more fear than loyalty now. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a wide, silent circle around Trent, as if instability radiated off him like heat. "Alara," Trent said again, but this time his voice cracked, pathetic instead of powerful. "We need to talk." Cassian stepped in front of her immediately. "She doesn't owe you anything." Trent's face twisted. "This doesn't involve you." "It involves me the second you threaten the mother of my children." A wave of whispers rippled through the room. Trent blinked rapidly, stunned. "Children? You're—" No, she's lying. She's trying to replace me." Cassian remained calm, deadly calm. "We have the DNA results." The color drained from Trent's face. Cassian continued, voice even and sharp. "You're not the father. You never were." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Phones quietly lifted. Reporters, though barred from the ballroom, had already slipped inside under the guise of corporate guests. Every word was being recorded. Trent shook his head violently. No, this is a setup. She's manipulating you. She manipulated me for years." Alara finally stepped forward, unable to let him rewrite her story again. "Trent," she said softly, but firmly. "Stop." The single word froze him. She continued, voice trembling but clear. "You didn't love me. You didn't want me. The only thing you ever cared about was how I looked standing next to you. When I told you about the babies, you didn't hesitate. You abandoned me." "That's not." "You drained our accounts," she said, louder now. "You threw me out of our home. You told me no man would ever want me carrying triplets." More whispers, more shock. A woman in the crowd dabbed tears from her eyes. Trent's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Alara inhaled deeply, gathering the last pieces of courage she'd been rebuilding since the moment she boarded that awful flight. "You didn't break me," she said. "You just freed me to find someone who actually sees me." She reached for Cassian's hand. Not dramatically, not with theatrics, but with quiet, steady certainty. The gesture gutted Trent. The room watched as he shook, realizing too late that the world he'd carefully built on lies and ego had collapsed. He tried one last desperate attempt. "Alara, please. I made mistakes, but we can fix." "No," she whispered. A gentle, final dagger. "No, Trent. I'm done." Security moved in, but Cassian lifted a hand. "Wait." He walked toward Trent until they stood inches apart. Cassian lowered his voice, not threatening, not cruel, but devastating. "If you ever come near her again, if you ever speak her name again, I will use every resource I have to make sure you never work in this industry. Ever." The words didn't have heat. They didn't need it. They carried truth. Trent stumbled backward. "You can't do that." "I already did," Cassian said. "Your company contacted me this afternoon for an investor meeting. I told them I wouldn't sit at a table with a man who abandons a pregnant woman. They suspended you within the hour." Trent's knees buckled. Krista gasped softly, then took a step away from him, severing her final connection. Security escorted Trent out, his protests fading into a distant echo. Alara's breath shook, not in fear but in release. Cassian returned to her side, touching her cheek with gentle reverence. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly. For the first time in a long, long time, yes. Bold mini cliffhanger. But the night wasn't over, and Cassian still had one final truth to reveal. The ballroom air vibrated with aftershocks from Trent's removal. Guests whispered in tight circles, glancing at Alara and Cassian with a mix of awe and empathy. But not all eyes held sympathy. From near the edge of the room, Krista Malone lingered like a shadow, arms folded, jaw tight, calculating. She watched Trent dragged out of the gala like spoilt royalty stripped of power. Her lips tightened. She'd tied her career to him. Wrong bet, and the crash was only beginning. Cassian guided Alara to a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the eyes and murmurs, though cameras discreetly captured every step. He set a hand on her back, light, steady, protective. "You handled that with more dignity than he deserved," he murmured. Alara exhaled shakily. "It felt like the first real breath I've taken in months." Cassian smiled softly, but the emotion behind his eyes suggested there was more he wanted to say, something he was holding back. Before he could speak, a ripple passed through the room. A man in a silver tuxedo whispered something to the event host, who stiffened and turned toward Krista. Moments later, the host tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the interruption, but there is a matter that needs to be addressed regarding a violation of confidentiality and misconduct within the aerospace industry." Alara's head snapped up. Krista's expression flickered. For the first time that evening, she looked genuinely frightened. The host continued, "Recent evidence has come to our attention involving deliberate falsification of internal reports and the sabotage of a former employee within the Manhattan office of our partner firm." Murmurs erupted. Cassian's jaw tightened. "Alara Whitmore," the host said, turning toward her, "this concerns you." The room erupted with gasps. Alara froze, breath caught, panic briefly flickering before Cassian stepped closer, grounding her with his presence. The host lifted a tablet. "We have documented, time-stamped emails and audio files provided anonymously. They confirm that Ms. Krista Malone orchestrated a smear campaign that led to Ms. Whitmore's wrongful termination." A collective inhale swept the ballroom. Cassian's face went cold. Alara's heart thudded. "What?" Krista tried to step back, but two event security guards blocked her retreat. "I didn't. This is taken out of context," she sputtered. But the host tapped a button. Krista's voice filled the ballroom speakers. "Make sure the leak points to Alara. She'll break under pressure. Trent wants her gone, and I want her job." Silence hit the room like a stone dropped into water. Krista paled. That recording is illegal. She's lying." But no one believed her. A CEO from a nearby firm stepped forward. "Ms. Malone, sabotage of a colleague during a high-risk pregnancy is not just unethical, it's criminal." Krista's voice collapsed into frantic whispers. "You don't understand. Trent promised." "Trent can't save you," Cassian said, voice steady and sharp as glass. "No one can." Security escorted Krista toward the exit. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step punctuated by the murmurs of everyone she once tried to impress. She looked like a fallen star, burning out in real time. As she passed Alara, she spat through tears. "You were never meant to win." Alara's expression held no bitterness, just quiet strength. "I didn't win," Alara said softly. "You lost yourself." Security pulled Krista away as she dissolved into sobs. The room erupted with applause, loud, cathartic, triumphant. This wasn't Alara being pitied. This was justice unfolding in a chandelier-lit ballroom. Cassian turned to her, pride glowing in his eyes. "It's over," he said. Alara exhaled, trembling with relief. "For the first time, I believe that." But Cassian wasn't finished. He touched her hand, voice lowering. "There's something else you deserve to know. Something important." Her heart startled. "What is it?" Cassian inhaled deeply, gathering courage. "Tonight isn't just about clearing your name," he said. "It's about giving you back the future that was stolen." Bold mini cliffhanger. Because the truth Cassian revealed next would change not just her future, but the future of her children, and the life she never thought she deserved. The ballroom glowed with gold and crystal, but for Alara everything faded except Cassian's voice. The world around them, executives whispering, champagne glasses clinking, Krista being escorted out in disgrace, blurred into a soft hum. All she saw was him. All she felt was the weight of the moment hanging between them. Cassian inhaled slowly, as if steadying himself before stepping off a cliff. Alara, there's something I've kept to myself, not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted the right moment. His eyes softened. And tonight is that moment. Her heartbeat stumbled. Cassian, what are you talking about? He led her toward the terrace doors, the ones overlooking the Los Angeles skyline. A cool breeze swept through the space as the doors opened, and the city glittered beneath them like a sky flipped upside down. The terrace was empty, just the two of them. Cassian turned to face her fully. I didn't just call off my engagement after Aspen, he began. I restructured my entire life. I walked away from a merger I'd been building for years because it would have tied me to people I didn't respect. People who valued power over humanity. Alara blinked, startled. You changed your company because of me? Because of what I realized after meeting you, Cassian corrected softly. I saw something real. Something I couldn't ignore. Her throat tightened. Cassian continued, his voice steadier now. When I learned you were carrying triplets, when I thought for one moment they might be mine, it didn't scare me. It felt like the universe was giving me another chance to choose something good. Something honest. Alara swallowed hard. Cassian, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet. He held her gaze, unwavering. Just listen. Inside, through the glass, the ballroom dimmed. A projector lit up the stage as names appeared on the screen. Industry leaders, innovators, the top 100 influential voices. Cassian's own name appeared among the first. But he didn't look away from her. I'm not asking for anything, he said quietly. Not tonight. Not after everything you've been through. I'm not asking you to fall in love with me. I'm not asking you to move in with me or change your life for me. Alara's breath caught. Then what are you asking? Cassian stepped closer, close enough that his warmth wrapped around her, close enough to quiet the trembling in her chest. I'm asking for a chance, he whispered. A chance to be in your life, in their lives. A chance to give you something safe, something steady, something you've never been allowed to have. Emotion crashed through her, fear, hope, longing she'd buried so deeply she didn't recognize it at first. Cassian, her voice broke. I'm scared. Everything in my life falls apart when I trust someone. He gently touched her cheek. Then let me be the first thing that doesn't fall apart. The city lights flickered across her skin. Her eyes glistened. Inside the ballroom, the doors burst open suddenly. A rush of noise spilled out. Cheers, applause, commotion. Someone shouted Cassian's name. Alara, Cassian, a staff member panted. You two, you need to see this. They returned inside, still hand in hand. On the massive projector screen behind the stage was an image. Alara Whitmore at the gala, standing tall beside Cassian Drake. And beneath it, in crisp gold lettering, Aerospace Insider magazine, Alara Whitmore, nominee for the 2025 Courage and Integrity Award. Alara froze. The room erupted in applause. A wave of emotion hit her so hard she almost buckled. Cassian steadied her. They're honoring you, he whispered. For surviving, for standing up, for everything. Tears filled her eyes, not of pain, not of fear, but of something she hadn't felt in over a year. Pride. Belonging. Worth. She turned to Cassian, voice trembling. Why would they nominate me? Cassian smiled softly. Because the world finally sees what I've seen since the moment I found you on that plane. Bold mini cliffhanger. But the night was not over, because Cassian was about to make a choice that would change all four of their lives forever. The ballroom's golden lights dimmed into a soft twilight glow as the crowd continued applauding Alara's nomination. She stood there trembling, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that she was no longer invisible, no longer trapped in a life built by someone else's cruelty. Cassian stepped closer, his presence warm, steady, anchoring her as she blinked back tears. Alara, he whispered, this is only the beginning. Before she could respond, the host tapped the microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude tonight's ceremony, we have one final moment to honor. Alara felt Cassian's hand tighten around hers. The host smiled toward them. Mr. Cassian Drake has requested the floor. A ripple of excitement spread through the audience. Phones lifted. The air grew expectant. Cassian turned to her, his eyes soft with a mix of nervousness and devotion she'd never seen in him before. "Alara, I need you beside me." He led her slowly toward the stage, guiding her carefully up the steps so she wouldn't strain her balance. When they reached the center, he didn't face the crowd, he faced her. "Alara Whitmore," he began, voice strong but trembling at the edges. "You walked into my life once by accident, and fate brought you back to me in the most unexpected, terrifying moment imaginable." She tried to speak, but he gently shook his head, asking her to let him continue. "I watched you fight through fear. I watched you protect children who didn't choose the circumstances of their life. I watched you stand tall against lies, manipulation, and cruelty. And tonight, I watched you reclaim your dignity in a room full of people who once would have overlooked you." Alara's chest tightened painfully with emotion. Cassian took a breath, stepped closer, and cupped her hand between both of his. "You told me you were scared to trust, scared everything would fall apart again. But Alara, I am not Trent, and I will never be a man who leaves you alone in the dark." Her lips parted, another tear slipping free. Cassian sank slowly to one knee. The room gasped. Alara froze, heart thundering in her chest as if trying to break free. Cassian looked up at her with a tenderness so powerful it nearly unraveled her. "I'm not asking you to rush. I'm not asking you to pretend we're something we're not ready for. I'm asking you to let me be your partner, your support, your safest place. And if you're ready, I'm asking you to marry me." The ballroom erupted, cheers, gasps, applause, but all Alara heard was her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Cassian continued, voice steady, eyes locked on hers. "No matter what you choose, I'll be here. For you, for them, for the family we didn't plan, but that I'm ready to honor with everything I have." Alara's breath shook. "Cassian, Her hand drifted to her belly. The babies fluttered gently beneath her palm, as if responding to the moment. Then she looked down at the man who had fought for her, protected her, believed her, and saw her in ways Trent never could. "Yes," she whispered. "Cassian, yes." A collective cheer swept the ballroom like a warm wave. Cassian stood quickly, gathering her carefully into his arms. He kissed her, not with urgency, but with reverence, like she was something sacred. Alara felt herself finally exhale, not in fear, not in defeat, but in peace. Hours later, as they stepped out onto the terrace again, the first hints of sunrise painted the Los Angeles sky in amber and rose. Cassian wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, resting her cheek against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of a man who had chosen her fully. "I feel free," she whispered. "You are," he murmured. "You always were. Now the world knows it too." Below them, the city glowed. Behind them, justice had been served. And ahead of them, a future built not on fear, but on love, healing, and the family she had fought so hard to protect. Bold mini cliffhanger. Because sometimes the most unexpected flight leads you exactly where you were meant to land. All right, my wonderful friends. The story has come to an end. And if you are still here, right now, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a way that words alone cannot explain. Maybe it reminded you of your own battles, your own heartbreak, your own moments where you had to stand back up after the world tried to break you. This story isn't just about love or revenge. It's about rebirth, about remembering that, as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Alara's pain didn't end her. It shaped her. It carved space for something stronger, kinder, and truer to enter her life. And that's something each of us can carry into tomorrow. You are allowed to start again. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to heal, slowly, gently, bravely. So if this story reached you, stay with us. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength. And don't forget to subscribe so we can walk through more stories, more healing, more courage, together. You're not alone here. We're right here with you.